Hello and happy Pride Month, everybody. Today we are going to be looking at someone I personally consider to be an embarrassment to the LGBTQ plus community, Riley J. Dennis, whose opinions apparently include allowing children as young as 5 to medically transition on their own say-so, and that biological sex is as much a social construct as gender. I chose Riley figuring that if we don't point out the dumps within our own community, there's no counterpoint to prevent them from continuing to make all of us look bad, since someone outside the community pointing them out runs the risk of being dismissed and mislabeled as homophobic, transphobic, etc. For my straight cisgendered viewers, a quick disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed by Riley J. Dennis are not necessarily those of even the majority of the LGBTQ plus community, and probably not those of anybody who thinks about anything for more than 5 seconds before they put it on the internet. Also, in case anyone doesn't quite get my background, in addition to the rainbow, I've decided to also include the gender-fluid pride flag and the bisexual pride flag, obviously because both of them apply to me. Now, let's get on with this, shall we?
Hey everyone, my name is Riley, and as you can tell from the title, today we're going to be talking about some of the worst parts of being trans.
Hi, Riley. My name is Susie, and if you hadn't guessed by the rest of my content, I'm going to be critiquing virtually every word that comes out of your mouth, starting with your failure to mention that this list is solely your own opinions and isn't based on any sort of research, surveys, or study of anything beyond your own fifis.
Now, obviously, I'm not trying to dissuade you from identifying as trans if that's how you really feel, and I'm definitely not trying to dissuade you from transitioning if you think that's the best path for you.
Trust me, Riley, nobody who has ever watched your channel would ever think that. In fact, you go so far the opposite direction that some might suspect that you get kickbacks from doctors who perform gender reassignment surgery. Not that I would ever suggest anything like that.
Every person's situation is different, but I do think that most of the time being honest with yourself about your identity is for the best. And then even better than that is allowing yourself the space to consider taking some steps to feel more comfortable in your body with that identity. In fact, if you feel that you're trans and that transitioning is right for you, I would highly recommend that you pursue that because the outcomes for transitioning are overwhelmingly positive.
I can't really say that Riley is right about this, with a study showing that the number of suicide attempts among transgender people is nearly 9 times the national average. But since that covers all transgender people, not just those who've transitioned, and the detransition rate numbers that I've been able to find ranging from 1.5% to 5%, I can't really say she's wrong either.
For me, I have absolutely no regrets about transitioning, and it has made me 1,000,000 times happier. I've even made an entire video about all of the best parts of being trans, which you can watch by clicking the card up here or using the link in the description. In that video, I said I'd eventually make an equivalent worst parts of being trans video, which is why I'm here. But I wanted to make the best parts video first, because if at any point this video makes you feel hopeless about being trans or possibly identifying as trans, I'd recommend you go watch that one to cheer yourself up.
Of course you would. Wouldn't want pesky other opinions interfering with your narrative, would we? Now, I'm not trying to invalidate anyone. I would never do that. But if someone has second thoughts about their gender identity after listening to you, Riley, for any reason, other than maybe not wanting to be directly associated with you, then maybe those second thoughts are justified. After all, as far as I've been able to determine, you've made a whole channel of the quote-unquote best parts of being trans.
The truth is, being trans comes with a lot of positives and negatives, just like any other part of your identity. I made that best parts video because I think some trans people stay in the closet longer than they have to out of fear of how coming out will affect their life. And I wanted them to know that there are actually a lot of positive aspects. Obviously, I'm not trying to convince anyone either way because there would be no point.
Why do I not believe you?
Trans is not a choice, it's just a thing you feel about who you are. This video I'm mainly making because I want cis people, as in people who are not trans, to realize some of the daily struggles that trans people have to go through. Life can definitely be hard for trans people, but not because there's anything innately difficult about being trans. It's just—
Now, the smart people among my audience, which is pretty much all of you, are saying to yourselves right now, wait a minute, What about gender dysphoria? That's a pretty serious problem that is in fact inherent to being trans. Well, spoiler alert, Riley here seems unaware of the fact that it exists, or at the very least conveniently never mentions it.
Just because society can be all kinds of awful to trans people. So for this video, I've identified 12 things that I think are the worst parts about being trans. Although obviously this is just how I see it, and it's very possible that there are other aspects that I forgot, or some that don't affect all trans people. But for
Credit where it's due. I hereby take back my previous criticism of Riley for not stating that these were only her own opinions. Though I still think she would have been better served to actually do some research, or at the very least talk to a trans person other than that silly twit who stares blankly back at her from the mirror.
First, before we get into that, I want to tell you about this video's sponsor, the Dollar Shave Club.
Whoa, hold it there, Riley. There is no way your sponsor is getting any free advertising on my channel. Though it does seem like Dollar Shave Club will sponsor damn near anybody. Maybe I should call them. Granted, it wouldn't sound very genuine for someone completely covered in fur to talk about a razor.
Anyway, back to the video.
I'm a-quiver with anticipation.
So, first up on my list of the worst parts of being trans is unsupportive family and friends. This one is going to vary depending on your situation, but for lots of trans people, coming out means their family kicking them out, or their friends no longer talking to them, or in other cases, their family keeps them around but constantly berates them and misgenders them, or their friends might downplay their feelings and try to convince them that they're not actually trans. Any of these outcomes can be extremely damaging for trans people. It hurts them to see the people they love and trust suddenly turn on them because of a part of themselves that is out of their control and isn't hurting anyone. For some trans folks, they might find that people who claimed they loved them unconditionally really did not. Or they could be in a sort of middle ground where they think their loved ones might have good intentions, but they still continue to misgender them and insult them, claiming that it's in the trans person's best interest. Any of these outcomes can be extremely painful for trans people. Of course, there are definitely cases where a trans person comes out and is accepted by their family and friends, and that is lovely and wonderful and a huge sign of progress. But for many, that's still not a reality, and that just sucks.
Hold on a second there, Riley. Earlier in this video, you made the comment that...
Though obviously this is just how I see it, and it's very possible that there are other aspects that I forgot, or some that don't affect all trans people.
Which gave the impression that you were going to focus on matters that applied to virtually all trans people, then admitted that the very first thing on your list didn't. I'll allow that literally the only thing that applies to all trans people is being trans, but that still gives the air of inconsistency. Also, it might just be me, but I got the impression that Riley was trying to portray this as exclusively a problem for trans people, when in actuality it could potentially happen to not only literally anyone in the LGBTQ+ community, but anyone who does anything outside of what their family and friends consider normal. From entering an interracial relationship to converting to a different religion or rejecting religion altogether and becoming atheist.
Next is general transphobic harassment and bullying. This differs from the first point because this is about people who don't know the trans person, and it's a different kind of pain. Being betrayed by their friends and family has a particular sting to it because of their relationship to them, but general transphobic harassment and bullying can come from anyone. If a trans person has any public online profiles where they even casually mention being trans, chances someone's going to send them hateful messages. If they're walking down the street and look visibly trans, whatever that means, they're likely to get hateful comments or worse. These things can be demoralizing in their sheer volume. It's one thing to be insulted once, it's another to have it happen repeatedly for long periods of time. Unless they're isolating themselves completely from both the physical world and the online world, which I would not recommend, they're probably going to be the target of at least some transphobic harassment. It's really sad that that's the way our society is right now, but that's the reality for a lot of trans people.
Oh, I should have known she'd go to the mean words on the internet bit. Look, most online forums have this really neat thing called a block function for people who behave like that. What's more, such behavior is usually a violation of the terms of service of the forum, so you also have the option of reporting them. As for random encounters in the street, there's a quote that I've had trouble nailing down an original source for that goes something like, "You worry less about what people think of you when you realize how seldom they do." The vast majority of people you happen to meet on the street simply don't care what you do one way or the other. A significant majority of those who do either have the courtesy or lack the courage to say something to your face. And on the off chance someone actually does confront you while you happen to be walking down the street, ignore them and keep walking. Why should their opinion make a difference to your life? Finally, in the horrifying but thankfully rare instance that somebody does take it a step further, press charges. Because thanks to the society that Riley thinks is so hurtful, that's a hate crime which carries a higher sentence.
Third on this list is you have to become an expert in gender and biology to defend yourself.
No, Riley, clearly you don't, as evidenced by your own claim that physical sex is as much a social construct as gender, despite the literally millions of species that have physical sexes without having a society.
I mean, technically you don't have to, and I support every trans person's right to be just as ignorant about gender and biology
As you?
as any cis person.
You know, Riley, that sounded a little cisphobic. Yes, cisphobia and heterophobia are things, just like transphobia and homophobia, but I'll give you the benefit of the doubt for now.
But when you're trans, people are probably going to constantly be asking you all sorts of deep questions about gender, and they'll expect you to have an answer.
Riley, the vast majority of people who would bother to ask at all are probably only looking for the specific feelings and interpretations of the person they're asking. If you have trouble wrapping your head around this concept, please refer to my previous "most people couldn't care less" statement.
And they'll probably use their 4th grade understanding of biology to try and undermine your identity.
Not that Riley's doing anything at all to try to poison the well or give the impression that she has some sort of prejudice against cisgendered folks. Not to mention that even a 4th grade understanding of biology would actually be a step up from the previously mentioned pre-kindergarten level she has.
And so a pretty detailed knowledge of gender and biology becomes essential to a lot of trans people, just so that they can know what to say when people ask certain questions or throw baseless accusations around. Meanwhile, there are cis people who don't know anything about gender or biology, but no one is questioning their identity. It just sucks that we're not allowed to have the same level of apathy towards gender or biology, because half the conversations we have with cis people actually just end up being pop quizzes. And nobody wants that many quizzes in their life.
Ugh. Riley, giving you the benefit of the doubt that this entire argument isn't a straw man fallacy and that you actually have civil conversations with cis people, I'm willing to bet that the main reason that they always turn to the subject of gender is because you steer them that way. It seems to be your favorite subject to talk about. Though I have to admit I'm relieved that it seems you've accepted that while gender is more a factor of sociology than biology, the two are at least somewhat connected. Oh, I really need to find shorter videos to critique. We're only 3 statements in out of, I think, 12, and I've already reached the point that
my brain hurts!
So we're going to extend Pride Month into July and cover the rest of Riley's statements next time. Before I get out of here, huge shout out and thanks to my old dear friend Segundo Marasta for serving as a sounding board from a trans perspective for some of my arguments. He's also helped me with some stuff for the next video, but he doesn't know it yet. Also, the couple of you who were aware of the Easter egg in my previous videos might have noticed that it wasn't in this one. Frankly, it's gotten to be too much of a pain in the butt to deal with, but I might throw it in here and there in future videos. Anyway, until next time, stay safe, and as always, stay sane, everybody. Smoochies! If you like what I do, but want to see somebody do it way better, be sure to check out Sir Sick, the Social Inequality Crusader. Links in the description below. And tell him Susie sent you.